So in Ayurveda, dosha is kind of referred to all over the place now. I'm finding that dosha is really like this hip term because there's all sorts of dosha quizzes. So we have 5 elements in our body, and in Ayurveda we see that the different elements make up different doshas: Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So if you've taken a dosha quiz, you've probably come across Vata, Pitta, Kapha before. And so what we're really looking at is the state of imbalance. So it's what elements in the body are a little bit more elevated than some of the other elements is generally what the dosha is going to refer to in terms of the dosha quiz. I find that it can be a little bit of a hard thing to grasp when we really attach to like one dosha, you know, I'm Pitta, I'm Vata, but it's quite fluid. We have all 3 doshas in our body at all times, and it's just which ones are a little bit more elevated, which ones predominate in our mind and in our body more than the others. And that depends on how you've been predisposed based on like birth and genetic factors, as well as where you live, what age you are, like how high your stress level is, what's going on in the world, also the season, the time of day, all of that can really impact your dosha or your state of imbalance. So Pitta is fire and water, but when we think about Pitta dosha, I kind of think about lava. So it's like a fiery water that spreads and moves, but it's hot. And so Pitta is a very transformative dosha. We all have Pitta in us. Some of us have more Pitta than others. So our doshas, you know, we have these doshas, and where I sometimes love to stray a little bit away from the idea of dosha is fault is we can also really use the doshas to our strengths as well. So if you're more Pitta predominant, you're probably really, really driven. And although that can lead you to an imbalance, you can also really use that to your benefit as well. So Pitta dosha is driven, oftentimes pretty athletic, really sharp, gets stuff done. It's really a go-getter as far as the way we look at it in the mind. And in the body, sometimes we can see Pitta dosha as excess heat. So in the summer, it's pretty hot, and excess heat can manifest in the body as like skin issues, things like rashes, acne, psoriasis, eczema. Oftentimes that's a sign of excess heat in the body. Even like bloodshot eyes, like really red eyes, can be a sign of a little bit too much Pitta or a little bit too much heat in the body, as well as loose stools or diarrhea. That can sometimes become really common in the summer, and that would be a sign too that there's a little bit too much heat in your digestive system. So again, we can use Pitta dosha as a strength. Like we can use the Pitta to really get stuff done and drive us forward. And it can be a little bit detrimental to our health as well. Summer, in the hot weather, pretty much everyone has a tendency towards aggravated Pitta. If you are a Pitta predominant person, so if you've taken a dosha quiz or you've worked with an Ayurvedic practitioner or coach and they've told you that you have a lot of Pitta, you're probably even more likely to have a Pitta imbalance in the summer. So we really want to think about cooling, sweet, hydrating foods so that we don't heat that excess fire that we already have in our body. So some good examples of some naturally sweet foods would be fruit. So this time of year, there's so many amazing tree fruits that are just so sweet, so juicy, and ready to be eaten. So things like plums, peaches, really wonderful for Pitta. Grapes are also really wonderful for Pitta. If you are looking for grapes, I do recommend trying to get them from a farmer's market and trying to get a really nice local variety of grape, organic rather than conventional, because their grapes are pretty pesticided. And the basmati rice, quinoa, amaranth are all grains that would be really nice for Pitta because they're very cooling. They're not going to overheat your body. Again, we want that natural sweet taste. So avocado is also nice for Pitta because it's soothing and it's sweet. Ghee, melons, pomegranates are also wonderful for Pitta. Dark leafy greens. So Pitta, we want to really support the liver in the summer, and we want to make sure that that doesn't get overheated. And one of the ways that you can do that is with bitter greens, and you'll find that in the dark leafy greens. So things like kale, dandelion greens, that's like number one food for Pitta. If you can find dandelion greens in your local farmer's market, grab those. Arugula, endives, escarole, all of that are really wonderful for Pitta as well. You would want to avoid if in the summer, or if you know that you're a Pitta predominant person, unfortunately, you'd want to avoid caffeine and alcohol. Those are two things that Pittas often reach for, but we don't need, both of those create a lot of heat in the body. And again, Pitta is hot, and you don't want to create excess heat with Pitta. You also want to avoid spicy foods. I personally am a Pitta, and that's my hardest one because we often crave what furthers our imbalance. So if we're already hot, if we're already kind of spicy, our body's probably craving a little bit more spice. I could personally put hot sauce on everything, but if you're a Pitta, tame the hot sauce. Try to avoid that. And then fried foods. You'd also want to avoid fried foods. So like, think about like chicken wings, chicken fingers, French fries, all of that can really aggravate Pitta dosha, especially in the summer. You would also want to cut back on red meat. A little bit here and there is probably okay, but red meat can be heating, so that would be something you would avoid. And I would, opt for some fish, chicken, turkey, some other a little bit more cooling meats, or even beans as a protein source instead of red meat. And then fermented foods, you also want to cut back on if you're a Pitta. So that even includes like kraut and kimchi. A little bit is okay, but in excess, that can just be really heating because of the fermentation. And kombucha is a big one. I see a lot of Pittas just like guzzling up the kombucha, but it's quite fermented, which is going to create heat in the system. And so that you would want to actually cut back on as well, especially in the summer, especially if you're a Pitta dosha. I find that a lot of Pitta doshas love hot yoga. But again, Pitta is hot, and so hot yoga is going to make you even hotter. Plus, you're going to sweat, and dehydrate, which is not going to support your hydration levels because Pitta can get dehydrated as well in the summer. So I would avoid hot yoga if you can, and try to practice yoga in a room temperature room, or even like have some fan-ons. Let it be kind of cool and temperate while you're practicing yoga. In the heat of the summer, a Pitta dosha doesn't need to be practicing a really hot, like really strenuous, or a really strong, strenuous, sweaty yoga class. I would think about something that keeps your mind really involved. So something that's technical, focused on alignment, because Pitta is very sharp. Pitta likes to think. So a creative vinyasa sequence that doesn't move too fast, or an alignment-based practice where you can really focus on where your hips are, where your feet are. All of that is going to keep Pitta engaged in the mind, but not overheat the body. As far as poses that can just cool you off, one of my favorites is legs up the wall. It's such a great pose for really all three doshas, especially Pitta and Vata, because it's going to really ground you into the earth and help you become still. So legs up the wall, even with like a sandbag over the feet, would be nice. Any type of forward fold is going to be cooling. It's going to bring you a little bit more inward. So something like child's pose, Janu Shirshasana, or Paschimottanasana, all of the seated forward fold series is really going to calm you and cool you down, pull you a little bit more inward. So I would think of that as well. But again, with Pitta, they like to focus and to think. So I would find a class that keeps you really engaged, but that doesn't overheat you. A nice yin practice with a sound bath would be really wonderful for a Pitta dosha. I know like there's a full moon tonight, so if you could get outside and do a few yoga poses in the moon, that would be amazing. A few forward folds and then maybe a shavasana in the moon would cool you right off. And then, another thing that you could do as you're practicing, I often like to do, is just have some rose water by your mat. Spray your face with some rose water. That can be really cooling to Pitta anytime you feel yourself really kind of getting excited and heated in the practice. As far as pranayams go, alternate nostril breathing or nadi shodhana is a wonderful practice for all three doshas, but it's really nice for pitta because it's going to balance your nervous system. It's going to balance the two sides of the brain and calm you down a little bit. Pittas just have this tendency to be so excited and to go and do, and that's going to really slow you down. There's also the Sitali breath where you breathe in and out through your tongue. That is a cooling breath. You actually breathe cool air in through your tongue like you're sipping through a straw. That would be a wonderful one for Pitta Dosha as well because that cools your body off.